China and the US are in a war for power over America's backyard. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell, and after a lot of hard work, we have finally officially launched our new premium website over at ChinaUncensored.tv. YouTube has been censoring our content for more than 7 years. We can't stop them, but now we have a way to provide you with truly uncensorable videos. This new website has exclusive episodes that we won't be uploading to YouTube or anywhere else. It's only for our subscribers. And when you subscribe, not only will you get extra premium episodes on a regular basis, you'll also be supporting our continued efforts to expose the CCP on YouTube and elsewhere. Yes, we will continue to publish videos here on this YouTube channel, and we won't be removing anything. But when you become a paying subscriber at ChinaUncensored.tv, you'll get lots of cool benefits you won't get anywhere else, like premium videos, exclusive live streams, a way to chat directly with me and the team, and more. The link is below. Help us keep China uncensored. Now, on with the show. So, I don't know if you've heard, but the United States just elected a new president, which of course means it's time for all the upheaval that comes with a new administration. So as the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit closed recently in Peru, headlines proclaimed that China's leader, Xi Jinping, ended up front and center as Trump whiplash loomed. The summit was pretty unremarkable, except for a few key moments. For example, there was that time when U.S. President Biden arrived late to the so-called family photo, looking confused and unsteady. But it wasn't all gaffes and laughs for Biden, because he and Xi also held their final meeting on the sidelines. The meeting was pretty standard stuff for an outgoing administration with one of its foremost rivals, aside from this image looking like Xi is sucking out Biden's life force in order to stay young forever. Xi told Biden he's ready to work with the incoming Trump administration, and President Biden expressed concern about China's support for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Biden also reflected on his White House's approach to China, which included using diplomacy to manage differences over trade, Taiwan, and the South China Sea, all of which have clearly been super effective. Biden also reportedly requested that Xi use his influence over North Korea to press it to stop helping the Kremlin's war in Europe, even though China is also supporting Russia. But it wasn't what happened at the summit that was actually remarkable. It was what happened behind the scenes. China and the United States are in the middle of a competition for influence in Latin America, right in America's backyard. And that competition is playing out in real time in Peru. Because while Xi was in Peru, Xi took a little time off from hobnobbing with other leaders to inaugurate South America's first Chinese-funded port, the $1.3 billion Chancay megaport. The port is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative and is majority owned by COSCO Shipping Corporation, a Chinese state-owned shipping giant. Chancay is a small fishing town not far from the capital in Lima, where about a third of the residents don't have running water. So naturally, the Peruvian government saw this as an opportunity to create wealth and improve the job market for locals while helping the national economy. Xi has been touting the port as South America's first green and smart port, noting that it would allow ships to bypass stops in Los Angeles or Mexico, reducing shipping times for Chinese companies by as much as 10 days. It's also a deep water port, which raises concern in the U.S. about the potential for it to be a dual-use military facility. Evan Ellis, a professor of Latin American studies at the U.S. Army War College, told Newsweek that since Southern Command has responsibility for thinking about what U.S. adversaries could do in or from the region in time of war, it is perfectly reasonable to identify a risk that a private port exclusively operated by China's COSCO in the Western Hemisphere could be used to support PLA military operations against the U.S. in a time of war with the People's Republic of China. And there's good reason to suspect he's right. Beijing's doctrine of civil-military fusion allows the Chinese military to have access to companies and other civilian organizations. COSCO even supported People's Liberation Army Navy operations in Libya with the evacuation of civilians in 2011. Then there's the Chinese-owned Hambantota port in Sri Lanka, where Chinese warships have docked and been resupplied even without a military basing agreement. It's unlikely, for now, Peru would allow such a thing to happen. And in any case, China isn't yet able to extend its naval reach so far from its shores. But the US is right to be worried and prepare for such a scenario, which is a refreshing change of pace from their usual tactic of, let's just hold talks and surely they'll keep their word this time, 482nd times the charm. The greater threat is that Beijing is so brazenly challenging Washington in its own neighborhood, and to some degree succeeding. While in Lima, Xi signed many other economic agreements with Peru. China is trying to increase its political and economic clout in Latin America to wither away Western and especially American influence in the region. This also extends to Peru's energy and mining sectors, which the CCP dominates. Back in February, Peru approved the purchase by state-owned China Southern Power Grid International of two major electrical companies, ceding total control of Lima's electricity distribution to the CCP. And what can go wrong with that? If you can't trust a brutal authoritarian regime that constantly lies and commits human rights abuses, then who can you trust? A Peruvian analyst and reporter even said that China wants to be Latin America's switch, and Peru has become the paradigm of that effort. Then there's the issue of the mining sector in Peru. The CCP's appetite for natural resources, including minerals, is insatiable. They put the mine in mine. And that's leading to some big social and environmental issues. According to Peru's Ministry of Energy and Mines, Chinese companies produce around 25% of copper and 100% of iron ore, accounting for some 20.8% of total investment in mining in the country. So the CCP has its hands all over Peru, which sounds kind of creepy when you put it that way. But as usual, when it comes to the CCP's international influence operations, Peru is getting the short end of the stick. Instead of allowing for any kind of sustainable development in Peru, it's just creating dependence on China. And that's starting to create some pushback among parts of the country's population. Some Peruvians are outraged over the government's failures to transform these investments into wealth, and others accuse both the leadership in Lima and the company officials of corruption. What? Authoritarian and developing countries lied to their people and pocketed the money for themselves? How absurd. In Chancay, for example, the fisheries have been damaged by the port's construction, as well as a 2022 tanker delivery that went awry and led to an oil spill. And the port's construction also disrupted the currents, changing the good surf conditions that generate valuable tourism revenue. When China's involved, hang 10 usually just means the punishment for 10 dissidents. According to the Associated Press, with the local industries devastated, to make extra cash, one resident started offering occasional joyrides to selfie-taking visitors wanting to get a glimpse of the hulking Chinese ships. And then there's the mining situation. MMG Limited, 62.5% of which is owned by the state-owned China Minerals Corporation, received around $10 billion for the copper mining project in Las Bambas. This is the largest Chinese investment in mining outside the country's borders. Las Bambas is also one of the world's biggest copper mines. According to Dialogue Earth, a climate-related news website, activists claim that the company has exploited the ignorance and economic precariousness of the communities when negotiating agreements for the purchase or use of land in a region where 29% of the population is illiterate. The promised benefits and money for the locals is not coming, which, if you've been paying attention, is a common theme with these investments in BRI projects. Those Nigerian prince emails have come through more often than the BRI has. As a result, some people in Peru have protested the CCP's involvement in the country. Some portions of the populace are starting to wake up, and so is the United States. One of the reasons the Chinese Communist Party has been able to make inroads into the Caribbean, Latin America, and other poor regions around the world is because the West has not been very good at providing aid or investment to some of these countries, while Chinese aid and investment doesn't ask for any kind of democratic reforms or human rights protection. That's not really the CCP's thing. But now, finally, the US and some of its allies are belatedly realizing that to stop Beijing from filling the vacuum, they need to step up their own efforts. And the US is acting like a dad that's suddenly being more attentive because they're afraid of losing custody.
So this is an exciting day in our partnership. The United States will support the city of Lima as it develops a new passenger train line that's going to connect downtown to the eastern suburbs. The Caltrain rail system in California will contribute more than 100 high-quality rail cars and engines. And American companies will provide over 50% of the services for this project and the supplies for this project. When it's finished, this rail line will expand access to reliable, affordable transportation for some 200,000 passengers every single day.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken also pointed out that the Caltrain system will reduce traffic and congestion. It will give more people more options to get where they need to go faster, more efficiently. It will help tourists experience more of this truly extraordinary city. It will help workers spend less time getting to and from their jobs. This deal most likely will be good for Peru, but it's not quite as generous as Blinken makes it out to be. What's actually happening is Caltrain is upgrading to brand new electric trains in California, and Peru has bought the gently used retired diesel fleet for $6.32 million. Still, it's a step in the right direction. To keep the analogy of Peru being the child of actively divorcing parents, this must feel like they're getting two Christmases. And that's not all. Just like the late great Billy Mays used to say, "Where's my cocaine?" Wait. There's more. The U.S. just announced a sister relationship between California's Port Odysee and northern Peru's Paita Port. The two ports signed a memorandum of understanding focusing on trade relations, enhancing commercial exchanges, promoting economic development, port management, and exploring green energy initiatives. The American embassy in Peru said the State Department is funding the initiative, but didn't reveal the amount of commitments. This deal was part of a series of American agreements announced with Peru at the start of the APEC summit to set the tone for things to come. What's to come? We'll see. China has been banking on the U.S. being distracted by domestic issues and other global events to allow it to fill the void in Latin America, a region that Washington has ignored for too long. And the CCP has made big strides, much as it has in other poor corners of the world. China uses anti-imperialist propaganda to turn many of the most vulnerable populations away from a West that hasn't helped them much, while making undemocratic countries less free. But the CCP made a huge mistake, because its own image isn't great and its economy is in trouble. And now the US and some of its allies are waking up and realizing they can't cede the global South to the Chinese Communist Party, especially if the locals themselves aren't happy with the results. They need to stop trusting Xi before he sucks out their life force to stay young forever. Instead of clicking to the next video, head over to our new premium website at ChinaUncensored.tv. We have all sorts of awesome perks for our paying subscribers. And for all of you who contributed $15 or more last month to our Give, Send, Go fundraiser, we've sent you an email with a discount code that covers your entire first month's premium subscription or 10% off an annual plan. And for people who gave $50 or more, you've already gotten an email about your other rewards. More info is in the description below. So head over to ChinaUncensored.tv and become one of our first premium subscribers. I'm Chris Chappell. See you on the other side.